Hi there, it's Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you guys watching this video, and so I hope you will come along with me today and create this card. I couldn't wait to use this die when I received it. It kind of looks a little bit funky, reminds me a little bit of a sun, and so I have picked out this piece of sort of orangey paper from the Watercolor Wishes of the little 6x6 lawn fawn paper pad. And so I've just got the one piece for the minute, and I am going to cut it down to a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card front, essentially. Because of the pattern in the kind of watercolor wishes, obviously it's meant to look like watercolor. So I am being a little bit picky and picking out kind of the main part that I want out of the piece of paper. Usually I wouldn't do this, and I would try and save all of my scraps, kind of keep my scraps as big as I could. But yeah, I definitely wanted a specific part of the coloured paper, so that's why I did that. Now I have this silver glittery cardstock. This is just cardstock from a local kind of cheap and cheerful shop here in New Zealand. I think it's around $1 New Zealand or so per sheet. And then I use this foam packaging here, and I cut it down into kind of manageable squares to store it in my little craft space. And any die that's even sort of remotely intricate, I add this to cutting it. I don't even try and cut it anymore without it, because it just used to frustrate me so much and a waste of my time and paper and special resources. So I find that if I add this foam beneath it, I have never had any problems. So I cut that die out 3 times. The die itself is from AliExpress, and I will try and link that down below if you're interested. And I'm just kind of placing them roughly how I think I want them. This card is a pretty simple layout, but I did find that these little designs, I'm calling them a sun, but they don't specifically look exactly like a sun either. This is the part where I was having a bit of a laugh, because I want a second piece of paper here to create a frame. However, because I was so picky with where I wanted my my pattern from the watercolor paper, I'm having to trace and get the exact same piece from a second piece of the paper. So that was my own fault for being picky, but that's okay. And I have this frame die here, again from AliExpress, and I want to cut, I'm going to cut right out of the middle, because again, I want the pattern to kind of continue of the watercolor. So I'm going to run this through my Cuttlebug, which is the die cutting machine that I use. And you can see it's die cut really nicely. I only use the foam for really intricate things or dies that I think I might have trouble with. Otherwise, I don't need it at all. This is a piece of craft foam. Now you could use foam dots, foam squares, you can use craft foam. I got this foam from AliExpress, and I will try and link it down below. I think this one it comes in kind of bigger sheets, and you just have to cut it down. I cut them down to manageable sizes that I can store in my little craft space. Now there again are a million ways to do this. I chose to do it this way. You could also just cut strips and add it behind the little rectangle frame, but I kind of just use that pencil to make a mark, and then I'm going to cut out the inside with a pair of scissors as well. As I said, there are a million ways to do this, and this way is not specifically the best or the easiest at all. But I am just going to use a little bit of liquid glue to adhere that to the back of my frame. And I am in a glue pickle at the moment. I don't like any of the glues that I've been using. I am doing my best to use up the glues that I have before I buy new ones. But if you have a glue that dries clear, I don't want it to dry tacky, and is reasonably priced, hopefully, then let me know what you use in your crafting, because I haven't really found the right one. But anyway, I am putting it all together and realizing you really can't see the kind of full effect of those little suns. You kind of lose it by the frame covering up so much. So then I am looking at the scrap that I have here, and I think, okay, I need to change the plan here. So again, I am squirting out a little bit of the liquid glue, and I am just dabbing it on with the makeup sponge. so it kind of creates a nice thin layer, and this way I don't get glue all over my hands, nothing squirts out the sides of the design, and it definitely is the way that I've been leaning towards and using plenty recently. So I kind of have the others sitting there even when I'm putting the first one on, just so that I can get placement. But I have got all three glued down now, and now I just need to cut off those pieces that are hanging off the edge. I still think that you get a fairly good idea, even though I am cutting off quite a lot of them, you do get enough of the effect of the kind of cool design. So anyway, this is the frame that we just created before, and actually I'm ditching that part. So I am going to use the outside of the frame, and luckily I kind of, when I was die cutting the initial smaller frame, I made it really nice and even and centered in the middle. So the part that was left over from the outside is still nice and centered and even around the outsides. That was just a piece of plain craft foam that I cut into strips with my paper cutter, and I'm going to use, again, liquid adhesive to glue these on. So in the end, this did work out fine, and I didn't have to cut any extra pieces, but I kind of was just a bit lucky. Now I have this Thanks die. This came in a set of maybe 4 dies, which I will try and link down below. And I am going to cut this die out of some 48-pound Hero Arts vellum. This is quite a thick vellum, and I do like it for cutting out things if I need them to be a little bit sturdier. But I am going to cut these out twice, and then I'm going to stick them together using the same method that I did before, just squirting a little bit of liquid adhesive and using a makeup sponge to glue them together, and that way you shouldn't be able to see any adhesive coming through because it covers the whole sentiment. And so then it's still translucent, but it is not quite as translucent as it would have been with one layer. And you'll see why I did that in just a second. I've added some Wink of Stella to the vellum and dried it with a heat gun, adding some liquid adhesive to the back of my panel so that I can put it on the front of my 110-pound Nina Solar White card base and make sure it's all nice and adhered nicely. And then I'm going to adhere down the frame. You definitely don't have to use liquid glue here. Double-sided tape would be just fine, or whatever glue that you tend to use. Again, I'm having a little bit of a glue crisis at the moment, so I'm just using up what I have really. And then this little thanks is going to go right in the middle, but I want to pop it up, and to do that I'm going to use these Kool Tak clear foam squares. I don't know if you call them foam. They're just 3-dimensional squares. And so I have cut them up into like little slithers and putting them on all the thickest parts of the sentiment. And you can see I can cut even some of those little squares in thirds just to get them thin enough so that you won't be able to see them behind. So the reason for having the double layer of vellum was so that I could put these clear little 3-dimensional tabs on the back of the thanks without being able to see them through it, and it worked perfectly. And then from there I'm just going to add one last thing, and that is these little dots, dimensional dots. These have quickly become my new favorite, and I've almost used up this whole tab already. I have purchased a whole lot more of these, so they are on their way to me. But these I'm just going to add in a few just for a little bit of added extra interest. And that pretty much finishes off the card today. Plenty of those little dots. I hope that you enjoyed this card and that you can recreate something similar. Please join me on my Facebook group, Come Crafting with Natasha. I will leave a link down below and you can share your ideas with me. Thanks, bye!